Of all the flack that calisthenics takes for not being great at building muscle, no one can say that when it comes to the dip. An exercise that is versatile, scalable, and has very transferable benefits to our ability to develop phenomenal global pushing strength. Today we're going to dive into the best way to perform the dips with form cues, regressions to make it easier, and progressions if we want to make it more difficult. Let's get into it. How you doing, Cali Crowd? Welcome back to the channel that makes calisthenics simple. With the dip, the triceps are the primary driver, though depending on how we perform it, we can get the delts and the chest firing too. But it can be done poorly and in some cases dangerously. So we're going to start by unpacking some form cues, starting with the setup. At the start of the dip, we want to fully lock out the arms with the elbow pits pointing forwards and arms pinned to the side. We should also have the scapula depressed and retracted, getting our chest loud and proud. Quick note, if at this point your arms are straight and your elbow pits are pointing forward and you start to feel pain, then that is a red flag that the dip bars you're using are too far apart. This over time can lead to elbow and shoulder issues, so be aware of it and listen to your body. We also need to focus on the range of motion we're looking for in our dips. How often do we get to the gym and we see this, the skittish dips with poor range of motion? Crowd, if your pre-workout is hitting you this hard, then do yourself a favor and lower the dosage. We want to build strength throughout that range of motion, so from the start position we mentioned earlier, aim to slowly lower yourself until you're at about 90 degrees elbow flexion. You can go lower if you have the mobility in the shoulder, but there's little benefit to doing so. Past this 90-degree point, your triceps aren't getting much more of an eccentric contraction, but you choose what works for you. In terms of the body line we're after, there are two things to look out for. The first is excessive flexion of the thoracic spine. If you look like you're trying to look over your neighbor's fence, you're doing it wrong. If you look like you're trying to turn into a snake, you're doing it wrong. Avoid excessively extending the neck and aim to keep your spine neutral throughout the movement. Maintaining this body line will be difficult if the ground beneath you doesn't allow for you to keep your legs straight during the dip. To avoid letting this mess up our body line, we can bend the knees, but be really intentional with what's going on at the hips. We want posterior tilt here if we're going to maintain a neutral spine, so squeeze the glutes and brace the core. Okay, so these are the form cues for the dip out of the way, but the dip itself can be quite difficult. The good news is it can be very easily scaled back. And the first regression we should look for is the support hold. This is essentially an isometric version of the setup of the dip that we went through earlier. Lock out the arms, depress and retract the scapula, and hold tension throughout your body for about 10 to 15 seconds. When you feel ready, you can level this up to the band-assisted dip. The setup for this is very similar to the dip proper, with the exception being that we loop a band in each hand and rest our knees on it. Choose a band that allows you to hit about 8 reps and use a lighter band as time goes on. This is the best way to regress the dip, better than the assisted dip machine, as you get a far more practical sense of maintaining your stability without a full-on platform supporting you. In terms of the progressions for the dip, there are a few ways that we can actually go about doing this, and the first and most obvious of those ways is through adding weight. You will probably find that you can add weight relatively quickly after learning to dip. Just make sure you don't devolve into any of the mistakes that we went through earlier. Rep quality over rep weight every single time. Another way that we can level up our dips is with rings. The instability of the rings makes this exercise significantly harder, but the tension we're forced to create through performing dips on rings lends itself to more hypertrophy and strength gains over the long term. There are many things we can do to create variety in our dips as well, but fundamentally what we've gone through today will yield 99% of the benefits of this fantastic exercise. But guys, that's it, quick dip tutorial for you all, a cornerstone exercise for calisthenics athletes. But I want to know what you guys are up to. Are there any exercises that you're struggling with? Let me know down in the comment section below, and crowd, I'll see you in the next one.